With Soviet fighters slowly gaining their foothold on air superiority, the United States military had to deploy unorthodox methods to match, if not supersede, the Soviets. The inauguration and advancement of missile technology in the 1950s was so rapid that it almost saw dogfighting as a thing of the past. The best aircraft engineers from the biggest manufacturers in the country began developing new aircraft design without prioritizing an internal cannon. With passage of years, F-4 Phantom was the first generation and latest of the US Navy's fighter jets. Although they gained technological superiority, they weren't able to gain the upper hand over Soviet aircraft. The latest Phantom units in the Navy and Marines were insufficiently trained in air-to-air combat. With the outbreak of the Vietnam War in the mid-1950s, US Air Force and Navy suffered massive losses of 22% aircrafts. This was due to the misguided faith in missiles for air combat, and a mere 10 flight sessions training dogfighting that left very few pilots trained in the art. After conducting pilot training, establishing aggressor squadron groups trained to simulate realistic tactics and flying techniques in military war games, not a single pilot could defeat a MiG-17, according to unclassified data. After approval from senior military leadership, Vietnam veteran Colonel Gale Peck led the establishment of the 4477th Test and Evaluation Flight under Tactical Air Command. It had a simple purpose: to expose US pilots to the flight characteristics of Soviet aircraft and flying them in dogfights while monitoring strengths and weaknesses of both. The program began after the acquisitions of 2 MiG-17Fs and a MiG-21 loaned by Israel, which were captured from the Syrian and Iraqi air forces. Indonesia and Morocco supplied MiG-21s, while Poland and Romania supplied spare parts that the CIA purchased in secrecy. Even scrapyards and crash sites were explored to acquire additional MiGs. The array of Soviet aircrafts gathered together at Tonopah Airport, which is also the home of the F-117 stealth aircrafts. Due to some troublesome mechanics, risks were minimized by not flying at night or in bad weather, and stored in hangars to maintain confidentiality from the training pilots and the Soviet spy satellites. The jets were painted to look exactly like the Soviet Air Force, and the squadron was named the Red Eagles. The MiGs would be used as aggressor aircraft against training pilots flying F-4 Phantoms, with most US pilots not knowing that they were flying against MiGs until in the air. This deliberate tactic helped remove the first-time shock factor of encountering a Soviet aircraft in real-life combat. Over 6,000 US pilots were trained using the pros and cons of Soviet aircraft, and some 15,000 sorties were flown. Due to the lack of Soviet spare parts, the engineers and mechanics performed miracles to keep the MiGs airborne. Surprisingly, the unit remained active for over a decade until it was gradually phased out after the fall of the Soviet Union. That's all, folks. You have reached the end of the video.